Hello, everybody. My name is Cameron. I make a lot of guitar covers. Well, I say a lot, but I haven't made any in quite a bit, with life and all that. Um, but I've gotten a few comments asking for um, kind of a look at my presets, specifically regarding some of my edge tones with my U2 covers. I think this is a good one to start with because it kind of gives you the groundwork of the edge tone. That being said, in the demos you'll hear, I'm using a 2013 Fender Stratocaster made in Mexico. Um, the pickups are actually the same pickups that David Gilmour of Pink Floyd has in his Black Strat. So it's a Seymour Duncan SSL5 in the bridge, a Fender Custom Shop 69 in the middle pickup, and the neck pickup is a Fender Custom Shop Fat 50. And I'm using the quack position, so it's the bridge and middle pickup in these demos. Before we dive into it, I just want to give you a demonstration of what this tone sounds like so that you can get an idea. So that's the tone. That's the end result of all this. Um, Going into the amp, I use a Class A 30 watt TB. So this is a Vox AC30 top boost. Keep the drive fairly low at 1.6. The bass I turn down just a little bit. I find that if it's at 12 o'clock, it's kind of muddy. So I like to keep it down at 3.6. The Edge uses quite a bit of mid range in his tone. So I like to boost the mids just a little bit, about 6 or so. I also put the fat switch on. Um, you can do this either way. I think it sounds a little bit better with the fat switch on, but that's kind of a personal taste thing. Um, Treble is up a little bit. He also has a bright, kind of airy tone. So I boost the treble up to about 6.45. Back in my old tones, I would use the bright switch a lot and kind of crank this bright knob. And in hindsight, I think that was a bad idea. It made it kind of very icy and harsh sounding and kind of painful to listen to in some ways. So I leave that off. The depth I bring up, I find that the depth knob is able to add bass without it sounding like it's stomping all over everything. Master volume cranked to 10. I turn the saturation switch up to authentic and boost the drive just the tiniest bit. I think it gives it almost like if it was recorded on tape. So I think it makes it sound a bit more quote unquote analog. Going down to the EQ page, the only thing I change is the 125 and 250 frequencies. I boost just the teeniest bit. I think it makes it sound more punchy and less flat sounding. The preamp, I don't think I changed anything here at all. Power amp, same thing. I don't think I touched anything here at all. Um, If I did, you'd be able to see it. So you could just pause and honestly just put all these settings in if I did change anything. Power supply, I only changed a few things here. One, the line frequency I changed from 60 hertz to 50 hertz because, you know, U2 is an Irish band, so all of the stuff they use would run on 50 hertz rather than the American 60 hertz. Tremolo, I like to mess with a little bit. I find that it's very subtle. You might think differently, but I think it's pretty subtle. I like to boost the frequency up to about 5 hertz. It makes it kind of a fast, wobbly type of sound instead of it just kind of being a really slow LFO. The tremolo depth, I boost up to about 73, but like I said, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Now, the speaker page is where I think a lot of change can be made rather easily. I like to mess with these resonances and slopes rather than going to the EQ and changing things. I think this is more of a precise change, whereas the speaker is more of an overall tone change. So for the low resonance frequency, I have it at 102. Boost the Q so it's more of a sharper curve instead of like a lump here. The low resonance I have boosted a little bit, again, just to compensate for this lack of bass. The high frequency I've brought down to about 431. I like to keep it about 430 to 450 because that's right about the frequency of an A. And a lot of U2 songs are in A or D. So A, 440. So I just like to keep it around there. The slope I bring down, and this creates this flat line right here. If I were to change this, it would create a bigger dip and then it would come up a lot more. What it does is it boosts the mids while also bringing down the harshness and iciness, but it maintains the treble. So I think it creates a really nice balance there. Transformer frequencies, I don't think I messed with these at all. Speaker drives, didn't change that at all. Dynamics, the only thing I changed here is I boost the output compression. A real amp in a room has just a little bit of compression in there, so I like to add that in there to make it feel like it's more in the room. Everything else, though, I'm pretty sure I kept the same. And moving on to the cab, I'm just using the stock 2x12 top boost blue. I don't have any IR packs or anything. I don't have an amp to make an IR with, so I just only use the stock ones on here. I think the Edge actually uses a cream rather than a blue, but for my guitar, I think it sounds closer. Speaker size dephase is the same. Low cut 20. I bring the high cut down to about just under 11,000. If you bring it up all the way, I think that harshness and iciness kicks back in and kind of makes it too pingy. So I like to bring it down just a little bit. Also, I think it makes it sound more like an authentic amp. For the mic, a U87 condenser. Again, probably not what Edge used, but I just like the sound of it. I have the proximity boosted to about 2.56. And what this does is when the microphone gets closer to the sound source, the bass gets increased and also a little bit of the treble. So that's the cab. I don't think I messed with any of this. I don't remember what the preamp type was on, but I have it on tube here. I also changed the preamp mode to high quality. It does use up more CPU, but I find that for a patch like this, where there's hardly much going on, CPU limitations are not really to be worried about. And room, I like to boost the room level just a little bit, about 33%. Gives it more of the characteristics of an amp in the room. So that's the amp and cab. Now I'm going to go through, starting with the compressor, I'll just go through these other effects blocks. The compressor is just the standard first pedal compressor. I have the compression set to about 7. And when you do that, you have to boost the level a little bit because this will make it go pretty quiet. So I have the level boosted to about 6 dB. And that's basically it. I didn't change anything else. Going on to the drive pedal. The Edge uses a FET boost a lot. Dallas Shoe, Edge's guitar tech, says that the Edge likes it because you can increase the volume without increasing the drive too much. So it gives it more power, but it doesn't dirty it up. So I like to use the FET boost for that same reason. I keep the drive fairly low, but compensate for that by boosting the level fairly high. So for bad, I have the level at 1.97, or sorry, the drive at 1.97 and the level at 8.75. The tone I have set to 5.25. If you increase the tone, it gets really bright. If you decrease it, it gets really muddy. So I like to keep it relatively in the middle. The low cut I've set to 65. I don't remember if that's the stock or not. The high cut I have set to 5615. Again, I think that makes it sound less icy and harsh. The bass I've brought down just a hair at negative 0.48. The mid frequency I have at 885. Like I said, 440 is an A, so double that is another A. So 880 is an A. So you want to have that mid frequency kind of centered around there because that's a lot of the keys of the U2 songs. The mid I have boosted almost about 3 dB. It's at 2.91. The treble boosted just slightly at 0.29. And I don't think I changed anything in the advanced page. So that's the FET boost. And I will say, if you want to increase the drive, like for a song like Bullet the Blue Sky or Deep in the Heart, where it's very driven, what I find is that if you want more of a trebly drive, increase the drive on the FET boost. But if you want more of a mid-range drive, increase the drive on the amp. And try and balance those if you want something in between. Onto the delay, we got a dotted eighth note. Bad is at 98 BPM, or at least according to Google. A lot of times if I want to play a different song, instead of changing the delay settings here with the milliseconds, I'll just keep it at a dotted eighth note and change the tempo. I'll just Google the tempo of the song and then type it in there. For the feedback, I have it boosted up a little bit at about 39.1, almost 40. That keeps it at about 5 repeats, and the mix I have at about 38. I'd say generally for U2 stuff, I think between 35 and 40 is a pretty good mix level. If you keep it at 50, 50% would be the first repeat is the exact same volume as the original plucking of the string, which is a little bit too high. But anything lower than about 35, I think fades away too quickly. So I like to keep it at around 40. So this is the TC Electronics 2290 that the Edge used and Daniel Lanois used in the studio a lot. I keep it after the amp and cab because I'm pretty sure that's how it would have worked back in the day. The tone and duck, haven't done anything. The modulation is kind of a key ingredient. I keep the LFO, or low frequency oscillator, pretty high at about 3.2. And what this will do is it gives it almost like a texture. It gives it a vibrato. The depth I keep at 20%, and I put the depth range on high, so it's a lot more noticeable. The EQ, I have the low cut at 40, the high cut around the same as the amp. Again, you don't want it at 20,000 because it gets icy and harsh. So I keep it at around 12,000. I think everything else is about the same. If not, you can just type in these. And stereo config. And that's really the main delay. And you could use this delay for honestly almost any song and just change the tempo. Now I do have another delay here, and this is set up kind of as like a slapback delay, so it's very quick. And the mix is turned down, so it's hardly even noticeable. But I find that it kind of makes it sound like it's double tracked, so it kind of thickens it up just a little bit. Nothing else has changed about it. It's literally just this. Now the tremolo, this is something that I don't think gets talked about that much in U2 tones, but I think it's actually there a lot. It's just very subtle. And how I use it is I have the rate pretty high, and the depth relatively low at about 32%. I think it creates a texture, so it kind of goes along with the modulation of the delay. I just think it adds a wobbliness to it that I think sounds really good. And lastly is the reverb. I like to use the North Church. It's a longer reverb time at a pretty moderate size, just 55, but I have the mix turned down just a little bit. So while it is a longer reverb, you don't really hear much of it. I don't think I messed with anything else on here. The advanced, the EQ, and the ducker, I don't think I did anything with. It's mainly just the mix that I changed, and I changed the quality to high. And that's honestly it. I think it sounds good for me. I'd say mess around with it until it sounds good for you. I think the most important thing is to figure out what gives you the energy and the enthusiasm. So that's it, really. Here's what we got.